and welcome back to Sarah's Music. Today we're celebrating the wonderful music of the classic MGM musicals and a Berlin debut. We have a bit of Hollywood in Berlin today with the John Wilson Orchestra. John Wilson and his orchestra specialize in paying tribute to the music of the golden era of Hollywood and Broadway. Many of the songs from the MGM film musicals have become iconic. In the 1960s, the MGM film scores were destroyed. John has dedicated himself to reconstructing these scores to recreate the magic of the MGM film musicals.
We're ready to give you some MGM glamour. Ta-da! Today, to get the public to attend a picture show, it's not enough to advertise a famous star they know. If you want to get the crowd to come around, you gotta have glorious Technicolor, breathtaking CinemaScope, and stereophonic sound. If folks today could witness Valentino in the chic, they never would appreciate that lover boy's technique. If you want to hear applauding hands resound, you gotta have glorious Technicolor, breathtaking CinemaScope, and stereophonic sound.
The John Wilson Orchestra has just arrived here in the Philharmonie and they're setting up. They're set up as a big band surrounded by a classical symphony orchestra, and I can't wait to hear what it's going to sound like in here. John, welcome to Berlin.
Thank you, it's a great honour to be here.
A real debut for your orchestra today.
Absolutely, I can't quite believe it, like a dream.
You're playing music to make your heart soar, really, it does. How did you start getting interested in this genre?
You know, when I was a kid, I was just fascinated with music, whether it be a record of the Grieg Piano Concerto or a Beethoven Symphony or whatever was on TV. And on rainy Saturday afternoons, back in the 70s and the 80s, these films were shown. And I wasn't much interested in the films, but I was interested in the sound of them. There was something about the energy in the playing and the style of that playing which caught my ear as a 10, 11-year-old. And it's a sound I've been trying to replicate ever since.
How do you go about restoring? Because I heard a rumor you need sometimes 2 days for 2 bars. You had the piano scores, or did you have fragments?
There are piano scores for a lot of the films. Sometimes there's nothing at all. But the soundtrack is always the last word, because that represented the final thoughts on those composers, arrangers, sort of ideas about how the piece should go.
What you don't have written down, you get from with your ears. You listen.
Yeah. And it takes a certain amount of skill, but mainly patience. You know, you've got to just keep listening. It's like archaeology. I'm trying to take these mini masterpieces from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, early 60s, and, you know, lovingly restore them. I mean, I don't want to improve on them. I don't want to put myself into them. I want to get them polished and shining like the jewels that I think they are.
Some people from the outside might think this is a lighter music genre, but it's like you guys take it as seriously as you would a Bruckner symphony or a Brahms symphony.
Of course, if you take it seriously. The fact that it's light music, that it's easy to assimilate, that it falls into your lap, doesn't make it any easier to play. In fact, I'll tell you something, it's quite a lot harder to play than a lot of you know, standard repertoire, because the dressing of this music, the clothing of these tunes is so important. And the arrangers and the orchestrators who wrote these arrangements, they were masters, so they really pushed these orchestras to the limit.
You started as a jazz band with a few strings,
that's
right?
It, exactly right. And we've been adding, as the years go, and expanding the repertoire. But I'd say this repertoire is the repertoire which suits this orchestra the most, because it gives everybody a chance to shine.
Great, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
for
you
your
having
time.
us.
And let's get back and get ready for the concert.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Wilson asks you all the strings, to play with so much vibrato that he says that people's family photos should shuffle off the TV sets and fall down.
Yes.
That's a lot of vibrato.
It is. We're effectively trying to recreate the sound of the studio orchestras. The studio orchestras of the time, such as MGM, 20th Century Fox, they had the best musicians. They had some of the greatest European musicians had travelled to America because of war, because of problems in Europe. And this concentration of talent led to these studio orchestras where everyone's trying to outdo each other. It's a collection of soloists all trying to outplay each other, and that's effectively what we're trying to recreate.
It's high octane, it's pure technicolor.
Yes,
Show
exactly.
me.
This is a little solo from the end of one of them where I'm left very exposed, and even though you're playing very quietly, you have to be very intense. So.
Mike, you have been described as the soul of the John Wilson Orchestra. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Wow.
The first trumpet, the lead trumpet, is so important for the sound, the whole sound of the band.
Yeah.
There's this special vibrato that you use that's very different to classical trumpet vibrato.
I tend to use the air stream and the tongue position in the mouth. So instead of a straight note like that, we've got that kind of sound.
A little bit of a shake.
So it's almost like a shake, but the predominant tone is actually the middle of the note.
What's the greatest thing about this sort of music?
I think it's the actual arrangements and the way that it makes everybody play at their top of their game, makes them play out, and everybody bounces off each other. You know, you hear somebody playing the saxophone or the clarinet or the violin or whatever it is, and it makes you, I'm going to have a go at this now, I'm going to make this sound good,
I think one of the biggest differences between that style and perhaps a modern orchestral style is so much of it's about what you do between the notes. It's the vibrating between the notes, and if anything, vibrating more and faster between the notes to get this incredible sense of line, like the singers of that era. They sang with very, very fast, intense vibrato, and they sung in such consistent lines, and that's effectively what we're trying to do.
With my high starched collar and my high top shoes and my hair piled high upon my head, I went to lose a jolly hour on the trolley and lost my heart instead. With his light brown derby and his bright green tie, he was quite the handsomest of men. I started again, so I counted to 10, then I counted to 10 again. Clang, clang, clang went the trolley. Ding, ding, ding went the bell. Zing, zing, zing went my heartstrings from the moment I saw him I fell. Chug, chug, chug went the motor. Bump, bump, bump went the brake. Thump, thump, thump went my heartstrings. When he smiled, I could feel the car shake.
Is it true you have different drum sets for each decade?
Yeah, that is true, actually.
That's incredible.
These drums cover up to about 1956, and then I've got another set of drums that are similar to these, but yet I go to plastic heads. So it's important to me, in this context, getting as close to this music as we're able to through John, to make the right noise. So I've got calf heads instead of plastic. The cymbals, although these are new cymbals, they're designed and hammered to sound like very old-fashioned cymbals. I think it's important to be authentic in whatever music you're playing.
That's what this orchestra makes this orchestra so special.
It's authenticity.
Yeah.
It's about playing, not in a kind of dry, scholarly way, with pipes and ensuring, but you bring your own energy to it, but with a great deal of the enthusiasm leads to study, doesn't it? So like you hear something and you're really inquisitive. You're like, oh, how did he make that sound? And I love the way the drummer's not speeding up and playing exactly with the lead trumpet player who's also playing. And then you start realising the craft of this to do it properly. That's what we're trying to do here. Sort of thing.
Hollywood in the Philharmonie. I love it. See you next time on Sarah's Music, but first, a little bit more John Wilson.
That's entertainment.
You might see a fight like you see on the screen.
a swain getting slain for the love of a queen.
Some great Shakespearean scene
Where a ghost and a prince meet, and everyone ends in mincemeat. No death, like again Macbeth, no ordeal, like the end of the meal. This goodbye brings a tear to the eye. The world is a stage, the stage is the world of entertainment.
So, John, you say it's an honour to play in the Philharmonie. It's an honour for me to have you to do the horn challenge. We want a real Technicolor, Hollywood blast of glossiness.
God. Hang on.